Hi, my name's Paul Black and I'm running for La Plata County Commissioner. Today I want to talk about one of our most valuable assets here in La Plata County, which is our water. For the past 16 years, I've dedicated myself to water preservation in La Plata County. I currently sit as the board president for the Pine River Valley Conservation District, who we worked hand in hand with all of the cooperators here in the valley to make sure we're getting the needs met with them. The top priorities in that have always been soil conservation and water conservation. We've spent a lot of hours focusing on our long-term goals with that board to make sure we're getting the right money to come back to our area from the state and federal ends of it, to go to better practices of irrigation, moving flood irrigation into sprinklers so we can be the most efficient that we can. Not only that, it's protecting our soils here so we don't have a lot of erosion and loss of our good soils that we have here that make this green, beautiful area. On top of that, I also sit as a board president for the Schroeder Ditch Irrigation Company. And with that, I really learned a lot about how state statutes work with these irrigation ditches, the laws that happen, how it's measured, how we have to show our beneficial use, and really actually getting a strong voice for our local water rights all the way up to the state level and how important it is. The interesting thing about La Plata County is we're pretty much the headwaters for a lot of water that flows through the western United States. You have the Rio Grande, the Arkansas, and all of that comes out of the mountains right up above us. With these water systems, it's all controlled through the state, and then our division is Division 7. With that, we want to make sure that we use our water here locally in all the means necessary that it's decreed for. When I talk about decreed, it means what you can use the water for. So of course you have agricultural water, you have municipal water, and industry water. We have the irrigation ditches that run through most of our river valleys that channel the water throughout, and it keeps our water tables full, and it keeps our green open spaces looking beautiful. It's a huge asset for farmers and ranchers because they are the suppliers of the food and the products that we need to have locally. The water that flows through here has been established for many years. Most of them started back in the late 1800s, and they have canals that run throughout everywhere, miles and miles of this ditch system. So I like to think about some of the old technologies and how we could use it nowadays. So right behind me is what we call the mill stream here in the lower part of the Los Pinos River Valley. This stream was actually man-made back in the early 1900s, and it flows this water down through, and it ran multiple mills in the town of Bayfield. Those mills took the flowing water into kinetic energy to run their mills so they could process flour and different products that they had here. It was extremely important during the war times when they had shortages. That technology is a great usable technology that we could put in place today. I see all of these miles of waterways through here. Why couldn't we use that old technology with water wheels and different new technologies that we have today to start producing electricity with our irrigation systems that we have in here? Not only is it a good way to start producing power, but the technologies that have come along, we can do it in a safe manner for fish habitat. We can produce a lot of power with not a lot of fall, just volume of water, which we have abundance of here in the areas. And then we could be getting that out to our local areas for power production. To me, it just makes sense. We're already having the water flow. We might as well use it in multiple uses. Don't mind the cows. With those uses of water, it's extremely important that we show use here locally and beneficially. And when I talk about that, it means when we're showing that use of it here, that we're meeting the compacts that we have with the other states. We have to be very vocal and advocate for our water here so we keep it here locally and that we get these uses and we continue it through generations. I sat in a meeting last year with our state engineer, who's at the top of the state level, and then it goes down to our divisions, which is Division 7 here. They're specifically looking at our area because we have an abundant amount of water, and they want to put in some new regulations for metering and measuring our water here. And for me, what that means is they want to make sure they know all the water that's in our area, and if one of the compacts come into play with our other states that we have to be sending water to, they'll know exactly how much water they can pull from here and send. So that's why it's absolutely important for us here locally, all together, to make sure we're using our water here first and getting those beneficial uses. The uses that we have right now are pretty old school. A lot of it's agriculture, and then of course we have new development that's going through. And through the years here, as sitting on a lot of these ditch boards, we've had to do some really hard thinking about how we go from agricultural land into developmental land. And through that, we have to protect our water shares. So we've set some pretty good precedences to protect our water, to keep it flowing and making sure we're not impacting the water sources in our area. Talking about environmental sustainability, I really like to focus on things that we already have in our area that we could add another use to and not have to change a lot of things. When we talk about solar and wind, those are all new industries that are going to be coming into this area that will affect our environment. Now, I definitely believe every house should have solar or wind to offset their costs. I think that's a great starting point. But when we look at big solar fields, that will have an environmental impact in our area. When we look at these canals and waterways that we have, they've been established, most of them, for over 100 years. And we should definitely be utilizing them to also produce some green energy. The technologies that have advanced over the years are really good. We don't need to have a lot of fall or put in new infrastructure. We can do small generation and get it in the localized areas that we need. I like to say it's a dual purpose use that's already here. Let's think outside of the box and really focus towards that point. If you go outside of the United States, there's a lot of countries that are utilizing their water systems to produce power. All the way from municipal pressurized water mains to just irrigation canals flowing, you're able to go ahead and drop in some of these eco-friendly turbines that produce good energy. So we have a changing climate in our area, and we've seen this through Missionary Ridge Fire, the 416 fire. With those fires, what we have is we have soil that becomes unstable, and with our rains, it washes it into our waterways. And that greatly affects our water for our municipalities and our uses throughout our farmland. Just from the Missionary Ridge Fire, one thing that we've really faced a lot of trouble with in our irrigation ditches is the new sediment that's in there and the different types of plant growths and the issues that we have with that. Also, my time on the Pine River Valley Conservation Board, one of our top priorities has been mitigation of our forests to protect our waterways and our watersheds here for our water streams. With that, we've focused on knowing that we need to do some better mitigation practices on our public lands and our private lands. I also sit as the board president for Upper Pine River Fire Protection. And through the years, we've been implementing a lot of fire mitigation practices on private and also now moving into the public areas. With that, we learned that mitigating private land has been very hard to get done because you have subdivisions, let's just say Forest Lakes, and you have one individual that wants to mitigate their property one way and another wants to mitigate it a different way. So it's very hard to get a good scope of mitigation through there. You end up with a checkerboard system that you don't get very good effectiveness. Through those situations, we've been able to evolve and realize, well, we have these subdivisions and we have large chunks of ground around them that maybe we can mitigate those areas to create a divide from the public land to the private. And we've been very successful in those aspects. Through that, we also have ran scenarios through the FEMA to understand if we do have a scenario where a fire starts on 160 and it moves through our area, what are the other impacts that we see? One of them has been egress. That's something that we haven't utilized mitigation money for, but it's something that's come up recently that we've realized we have a lot of small roads in narrow canyons that create an egress issue for a scenario for wildland fire. I've started to think about in my mind of how we can make this work is a combination of we have egress issues through our roads that we've learned through different scenarios that we run with FEMA, and then also our fire mitigation. We're starting to realize it's really hard to get those funds to put in place to actually get the mitigation done. But if we can rethink that scope of what real mitigation looks like and make it a broader range, and if our roads are one of our big issues, let's start dual purposing that. If we need to widen our roads, I think of 501, 240, 250, all of those roads, they're beautiful roads to be on. They are very narrow, and we've learned that if we do have a wildfire scenario, it shuts us down and it's very hard to get people evacuated from those areas. So if we could pull federal funds for mitigation and widen some of those roads, put some bike lanes on there and create a dual purpose for that road, I think that would help with our commuting and with vehicles, and then also people that are wanting to use bicycles to travel through our area as well. I've resourced some links below that have helped me and kind of given me some inspiration of some different ideas that we could utilize here in our area. But I also want to advocate all the way to the state and federal area for us. And that's going to be part of the commission for La Plata County, is making sure we're speaking up loud enough so they hear us at the state level and the federal level.